Hello everybody, welcome to Little Rusty Bucket. Subscribe with the channel and drop a like. Trying to hit 50k subscribers over here, so that subscription would be much appreciated. I wanted to talk about Michael Porter Jr. in today's video because he is a player that has always been deeply fascinating to me, and I am now exceptionally fascinated with what his career is going to look like now that he is no longer a Denver Nugget. The reason that I have always liked Michael Porter Jr., at least the basketball player, because my God, does the guy have some wild takes off of the court, is that I've always referred to him as like a 6'10 J.R. Smith. The way that he shoots the ball is very similar. The amount of like, fuck you, I'm taking this three anyway shots. But of course, he's also 6'10", which increases the viability of said shots. And it's just made to him an exceptionally fun player to watch, in my opinion. He is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, but he's also one of the best tall three-point shooters who has ever played the game. Like, if you get into that 6'8", 6'9" category, in terms of the dudes who are actually great, really, really excellent three-point shooters, kind of a short list. I've always said that Paul George is the greatest three-point shooter over 6'8" in NBA history, or at least at 6'8" or taller. But Michael is definitely one of the better ones who has ever shot the three ball at the NBA level. And he also has other facets of his offensive game that can contribute to him scoring the ball pretty well. He has historically been a pretty damn good cutter, of course, benefiting seriously, significantly from having Nikola Jokic to throw him the ball in that context. But at the end of the day, you can still expect him to get a good amount of cutting action to go. He also likes to take mid-range shots, and I think he shoots a decent percentage on them, but I honestly have no idea for real just what his actual splits are. So I am going to pull those up just for the sake of reflecting. He takes about 18% of his shots from mid-range, or wait, no, that's 9%. I was looking at 3 to 10 feet. So yeah, very limited capacity, but yeah, I was right. He does shoot pretty damn well from mid-range. In fact, last year, 53%, 10 to 16 feet, pretty damn good. And he also shot a career high in that floater range, but he is historically not particularly great at that. But hey, career high mid-range percentage from 10 to 16 feet, career high floater range. That's pretty cool. Also, the third highest percentage around the rim, but he's at 77% at the basket for his career, which is really, really good, with about 1/5 of his shots coming from there. And then, if you did not know already, he is also a career 40% three-point shooter, 40.6%, and that is with about just under half of his shots coming from that range. So he's going to give you the three-point shooting, and he's going to give you the cutting. His mid-game is really not there. Floater range shoots decent but low volume, and his mid-range shoots really well but low volume. The big limiting factor for him for his entire career has been his ball handling. Michael Porter Jr. is just not good at putting the ball on the floor. He's capable of enough that, like, he can get you at a certain angle when he's attacking off of the catch. He can maybe get you with a pump fake dribble into a pull-up, or 2 dribbles into a drive if the lane's clear enough. But in terms of him creating his own shots off of the dribble, at best, you'll really just see him use his height to elevate. It's like he's not going to size up his defender and create a bunch of space off of the dribble with his handle, but he is so tall and he can like dig hard enough with his foot to convince his defender that he's driving, that he can then just elevate from there and use his length to get the shot over the defense, which is effective, but it is also not really conducive to super high volume scoring. Now, what was interesting to me going into this was primarily that he's not playing with Jokic, because this limitation to his shot creating factor has always been made up for by the fact that he pairs perfectly with Nikola Jokic when he is at his best. And that is the reason why I think it made sense for them to give Michael the contract that they did when they did it, because when you saw those two on the floor together, it was a hand-in-glove great play finisher in Michael Porter Jr., who's a high-volume cutter, strong finisher, and a great three-point shooter at a high volume. That is exactly the type of player you want to have next to Nikola Jokic. But of course, injuries. And also, I just feel like he lessened his percentage of cuts, like how often he was doing that. That felt like it became less of a factor in his offense. He did actually, I believe he had a career high in points per game this year. Yeah, 18.2. So, like, he was great during the regular season, but what is interesting to me is what exactly he will look like without Jokic, and he's only actually played 22 total games because Jokic is a fucking Iron Man, but he's played 22 games throughout his career without Jokic, and in those games, he puts up 15.9 points and 6.5 rebounds, which is cool. But the efficiency is questionable. He is at 44% from the field, which is not awful, but it means he's taking 14 shots to get to 15.9 points. And he is also shooting 27% from three on 6.5 attempts in those games. So, like, when there is more defensive attention and when he does not have the all-time great playmaking paired with him, he's not a particularly impressive offensive player. So, based on that, if I had to guess, if I was a betting man, I would say that Michael probably has some struggles in Brooklyn. But I have also always felt like if he was given a more significant offensive role, it would benefit him. But there's also the distinct possibility that he's asked to create more shots and he just looks foolish while that's happening. His efficiency dips and like maybe he technically scores a few more points per game, but it's a less valuable points per game ratio when you consider the inefficiency. So I don't know. There's a part of me that believes that he can just be a 20-point per game scorer with the Brooklyn Nets next year, just because it's very rare to find someone this size who shoots the ball this well. It actually reminds me of Lowry Markin, where I've always felt like Lowry just had this baseline level of scoring that he can do because he's a great shooter and because he's tall. And even this previous year where Lowry really fell off from the all-star that he was earlier in his Jazz career, he did still get to 19 points per game, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I think Michael could be in a similar spot where it's like, you're too good at shooting, you're too tall, you're a good enough cutter, we're going to find a way to get you some offense on this team. And also just from the perspective of the Brooklyn Nets, it makes sense to try and boost his value to potentially ship him off later down the line, because while I don't think he is a particularly old player, yeah, he's going to be 27 next year, it's also not like he's a foundational piece for this team going forward. I think he can be a exciting offensive player that sells tickets for them, but that's about the fullest extent of his impact there. And then you just hope, if you're Brooklyn, that his scoring is good enough that it is making his contract a little bit more attractive to a team, because he does have a 1-year deal, 1 year on his books after this upcoming season. So he will probably get shipped off in the offseason now that it's a 1-year deal. Possibly his value ends up being just a salary break, and that would be funny, because part of the reason he was in the Cam Johnson trade was for the sake of the salary break. So if he ended up being used to fix someone else's salary situation again because he's expiring and they're trading some other longer-term bad contract, that would be very funny. But yeah, speaking of, I do think that Cam Johnson averaging 18 last year, almost 19 last year, could be indicative of what will happen with Michael. Now, I do not think that Michael is nearly the ball handler or decision maker that Cam Johnson is. Not that Cam is out here dropping 5 dimes a game and, you know, never making mistakes or anything like that, but he's generally a minimal mistakes type of guy. And I think he probably fits this elevated role situation that he went going from Phoenix to Brooklyn far more than Michael Porter Jr. will fare for it. But like, I also am optimistic because like, I think Michael Porter, I don't know, maybe I'm just holding on to what he looked like in high school because the dude was supposed to be just this incredibly good scorer. But I always felt when he was in Denver that they could have included him in the offense just a little bit more. And I'm excited to see what he will do in this different role. I just honestly have no idea where my wanting him to be good and actually thinking he will be good lines are. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm very skeptical that he will be good there, but I am also hopeful at the same exact time. But yeah, that is it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.